What's going on, Headliner Nation? Thanks so much for tuning back into the Fantasy Headliners. Kyle coming to you with rankings for the quarterback and tight end position here in Week 11. Just a little disclaimer, remember that these rankings do not include anybody that played on Thursday night. These rankings are only for the weekend and Monday night. Not that it mattered much anyway, there was only a couple of decent fantasy options on Thursday night. But with that being said, this episode's going to be a little bit shorter than what you're typically used to. Remember that these rankings episodes need to be used in conjunction with our start and sit episodes. So if you're wanting a little bit more in-depth information about the player, about the position, then that's where the start and sit videos come in handy. The rankings videos are intended to be an update for you. If there's been injuries or news that has broken throughout the week since those has come out, that's where we update these rankings. So then you can see specifically, should I play this guy over that guy? So that's what these are for. So a little bit of information for you, but really just an update on where we stand with our rankings. So we're going to jump into it right now. Let's talk about quarterbacks first. All right, number one overall for me this week, no surprise there, Lamar Jackson. We're going to continue to put him up there basically every single game he plays. Patrick Mahomes at number two. He's back. He's healthy. He's playing well. We're going to keep putting him back up in that slot in top three, basically, depending on the matchup every single week. Drew Brees coming in at number three. The thing with Drew Brees, a lot of people are probably still upset about last week. He was supposed to have a big game against Atlanta last week. It did not happen. He gets Tampa Bay this week, though. Second most fantasy points against for quarterbacks. Their pass defense just has not been good this year. Definitely expect a lot of upside with Drew Brees this week. Dak Prescott coming in at number four against Detroit, who's allowing over 20 points per game to opposing quarterbacks. Deshaun Watson at number five, a little bit lower than the expert consensus ranking for me this week, just because I don't love the ceiling. I don't love his ceiling this week. Safe floor every single week with Deshaun Watson. I think his ceiling is a little bit lower this week. Josh Allen coming in at number six against Miami. Hard not to put him up this high, facing a Miami defense that continues to give up a lot of points to opposing quarterbacks. They've played a little bit better as of late, got themselves a couple of dubs recently, but still giving up over 20 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. Tom Brady at number seven. The pass defense for Philadelphia just hasn't been great this year. Jameis Winston at number eight. Rolling with him again this week. Matchup's a little bit tougher than it was last week, but we're still going to go with it. They're still giving up more than 18 fantasy points per game. Winston still throwing for over 300 yards. Last week it was like 5 of his last 6 games, 300 yards passing. Derek Carr coming in at number 9. Really love his upside this week. Really love him as a streaming play for those of you that need it. He's getting Cincinnati, both Cincinnati and Oakland. So you see there, I've got Ryan Finley at 14. Both of these defenses are tops in fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. So expect a lot of production from these two positions. Finley didn't play nearly as bad last week as I was anticipating. So definitely expect him, even with no AJ Green back this week, still expecting a decent week for him. I've got him all the way up at 14, and then Derek Carr at 9. Expect him to have a much bigger week. Jimmy Garoppolo at number 10. Looks like a whole new quarterback. Looks like a fantasy viable quarterback since that Emmanuel Sanders trades, and he gets Arizona, who's giving up 24 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks, the most in the National Football League. Matt Ryan at number 11. Looked good in his return last week. We're going to go ahead and run him out again this week against Carolina. The thing about Matt Ryan, and I talked about this on the start and sit show a little bit more in depth, is the game flow. So yes, Carolina is giving up a lot of fantasy points per game to opposing running backs, but you got to look at the running backs that have ate them up. It's Aaron Jones, it's Leonard Fournette, it's Derrick Henry, it's the San Francisco 49ers when they were running the ball a lot. So these running backs are not Brian Hill. I expect Brian Hill to have a decent week, but I expect Carolina to run all over Atlanta and control the clock with Christian McCaffrey. They're going to run the ball a lot with CMC. That's going to wind the clock down. That means that Atlanta's going to have to focus on throwing the ball more often, even with no Austin Hooper, even with Mohamed Sanu gone in that trade a couple of weeks ago. they're still going to have to throw the ball early and often. I think that's really going to limit Brian Hill's upside this week. However, it will help Matt Ryan. That's why I have him up at number 11. For number 12, for Kyler Murray, going to continue to put him up here. He played really well against the San Francisco defense a couple of weeks ago on Thursday Night Football. I'm expecting the same. At number 13, Kyle Allen, again, going up this Atlanta matchup that we talked about. Atlanta's giving up the 4th most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. Ryan Finley, talked about him already. Jacoby Brissett and Nick Foles, both of them returning. They're going to be much higher in the weeks to come. However, for this week, I am playing it safe. I'm being careful. Both of them coming off of injuries. Nick Foles, obviously, a lot longer than what Brissett's was. That's why I've got these two right next to each other in 15 and 16. I could see them going a little bit higher. I could see them going a little bit lower. I think this is a good, safe ranking for them this week, though. And then to finish things out, Phillip Rivers, yes, he gets Kansas City. No, he has not looked good lately. Kirk Cousins at 18, definitely a tough matchup. Do not love his matchup this week against Denver, especially no Adam Thielen now. I talked about it on the start and sit show. If Thielen were to play, I would move him to a start because it's more weapons to take away from Stephon Diggs. However, not feeling it this week. So I've got Kirk Cousins a little bit lower. Denver's done a good job of limiting some very good quarterbacks. Jared Goff at 19, Sam Darnold at 20. Both of these guys have not been very consistent in any way, shape, or form. So with quarterbacks being done now, let's go ahead and transition over to our top 20 tight ends for week 11. And we're going to go with Hunter Henry at number 1. The guy continues to be up towards the top of every single ranking. And right behind Henry, Travis Kelce, 1 and 2 in this matchup on Monday Night Football. Hunter Henry, I'm giving a slight edge to just because Kansas City has been a little bit worse against opposing tight ends this year. Hunter Henry continues to be a beast, though. We're going to continue to play him on a weekly basis. Travis Kelce continues to be a strong start as well. That's why they're at the top at 1 and 2. Darren Waller at number 3, hoping for a big bounce back week. He hasn't been great. He's been a little bit up and down. Yes, he hasn't had a huge week in a few weeks now. However, too much potential volume for him, too much potential upside. You have to play him on a weekly basis. I think this is the week he could potentially get back into it. Mark Andrews at number 4. He continues to be the main target for Lamar Jackson. We are running him out there. I said it a couple of weeks ago. A lot of Andrews owners were getting frustrated with him. However, you got to play him. You got to continue to put him out there. He is the main target for Lamar Jackson. He has too much potential upside every single week. And honestly, he has a super safe floor every single week. Yes, he's not going to hit every single week. That happens with every player from time to time. However, you got to put him out there because he's getting looks from Lamar Jackson. At one point this year, he was averaging well over 6 targets per game. At number 5, Jared Cook. Now, I have not had Jared Cook this high yet this season. However, going up against Tampa Bay, who gives up the 2nd most fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends, and last week having 7 targets with Drew Brees back under center, we have to acknowledge a lot of upside this week for Jared Cook. A lot of Michael Thomas, a lot of Jared Cook this week. Gerald Everett at number 6. Did I say Gerald Cook? I think I said Jared Cook. Anyway, 6, Gerald Everett. Going to be putting him quite a bit up there as well. We're missing Brandon Cooks at this point. He's done right now. So that opens up some more targets. A lot of people have been asking, what about Josh Reynolds? It opens up 3 wide receiver sets. They like to run that a lot. However, even if you see him out there, even if you see a lot of Josh Reynolds out there, I think Gerald Everett is going to be the guy that sees those targets that used to go to Cooks. Yes, they'll sprinkle around to the wide receivers a little bit, but I think you're going to see a lot to Gerald Everett now, and I think that's how it needs to be. He's having a really good season. I think we're looking at a matchup this week with a really nice floor for him. The Bears are allowing the 5th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends as well. They continue to lock down wide receivers. Kenny Golladay, Marvin Jones didn't fare too bad against them this last week. Cooper Kupp obviously coming off a very disappointing performance. Gerald Everett could have himself a nice week. Number 7, Greg Olsen redeemed himself with a big week last week for us. A lot of you that tuned into the show saw that I had a much higher than the expert consensus ranking, all the way up at number 4. He ended up doing very well. Tyler Eifert at number 8. He is my streaming pickup of the week. This is the guy that if you need to stream somebody, I'm going with Tyler Eifert this week. 2nd most touchdowns to tight ends and fourth most fantasy points per game to tight ends. That is what Oakland is allowing. If we're looking for touchdown upside this week, Tyler Eifert absolutely 100% has it. I'm streaming him in every single chance that I get if I don't have one of the guys above him. At number 9, TJ Hawkinson, a decent matchup for him again this week. Dallas allows the third most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. We got to use him, though. Are they going to use him? Are they going to get him in the game plan? He's just been bad. He has not been good all season long, except for week 1. What's going to happen this week? Still a decent ceiling for him. Zach Ertz and also Dallas Goedert. Both of these guys, I listed them as a sit on the start and sit show. However, that was before Alshon Jeffrey was ruled out for the week. So because of that, they are both going to get a bump back up into that top 12 for Zach Ertz for me. Dallas Goedert is a touchdown-dependent play. I could potentially have him a little bit higher. However, Jack Doyle, Noah Fant, Ross Dwelley, Kyle Rudolph, all of these guys I see potentially having a little bit more volume than Dallas Goedert. And then with Eric Ebron, essentially him and Doyle could go back and forth at any point in time. Who's going to get more volume? Probably Jack and Doyle. Who's going to get more touchdown looks? Probably Eric Ebron, more red zone looks, So that's why I've got those two right next to each other. And then Fant, Dwelley, Rudolph, I think have a little bit more volume opportunity than Goddard. Goddard's a touchdown-dependent play. That's why he is a little bit lower. Fant was a great option last week for Allen, or 2 weeks ago for Allen before the bye. They look to connect, see if they can do it again. Dwelley's going to be playing with no Kittle this week. That opens up a good opportunity for him and a really good matchup against Arizona, who gives up the most fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends. Kyle Rudolph with no Adam Thielen. He's been looked at a little bit more, a couple of touchdowns last week. Jason Witten against Detroit, a little bit more of a tougher matchup. Don't love that. Detroit's done a decent job at times of limiting tight ends this year. Jason Witten, I've got a little bit lower because I don't see nearly as big upside. Same thing for Darren Fells, OJ Howard, Mike Gesicki. Fells and Howard are touchdown-dependent plays. Fells hoping he can get into the end zone, but no guarantees there, obviously. Howard continues to be up and down. What are we going to get from him the rest of the season? Coming off a good week, but he's got to score, and he doesn't have a great matchup. And then Mike Gesicki seems to do good with Ryan Fitzpatrick in the lineup. However, he had a really nice matchup last week. Did not end up coming through for us. So I'm going to put him down at number 20. But there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Headliner Nation, thanks so much for tuning into this episode, our rankings for quarterbacks and tight ends for week 11. Don't forget, though, tonight on the live show, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time right here on YouTube. Don't miss it. You can't have a better time than hanging out with Jake and I for a couple of hours, getting your fantasy football questions answered, talking about life. It's just a good time. It is a good time. Show up for it. Hang out. We'll see you at that point. We'll see you tonight. Good luck tomorrow. If we don't talk to you again before tomorrow, make sure you check out all the other episodes if you still need help with your questions. And if not, good luck. We'll see you later. Have a good one, Headliner Nation.